Prologue. I woke 3 times in the dark pre-dawn. First in sorrow, then in joy, and at the last, in solitude. The tears of a bone-deep loss woke me slowly, bathing my face like the comforting touch of a damp cloth in soothing hands. I turned my face to the wet pillow and sailed a salty river into the caverns of grief remembered, into the subterranean depths of sleep.
It's delicious. In case you were wondering, that is the sound of what it's like to listen to an Outlander audiobook and play Pokemon Go at the same time. So we're gonna have a different beginning to this one. But first, I should say that I am Allison Shoemaker.
And I am Julie Starbird.
And that's Janine.
Hey, what's
and
up?
We are here to do the first of 2 episodes we're doing for episode 213 of Outlander, Dragonfly in Amber.
No.
But we have a very special beginning to this one because we have our first ever episode sponsor, and she is someone I went to college with.
Yeah.
So we are about to talk to the mighty, mighty Beth Locke.
Yay!
About the beer that she brought us, which we'll also be doing next week because she brought us so much beer that we put the rest of it in the fridge. And that's in spite of the fact that we're going to do another episode after we record this one. But you should know that, cheers, we decided just because it's tradition that
And
the
the
first
finale.
beer we drink should be Miller Lite, a fine Pilsner beer.
And a shout out to my friend Andy Fine. You're right, it is a fine at the beginning.
It is a fine. So just a couple of brief things about Beth. I'm really sorry to embarrass you, Beth, but Beth is a very generous human. She and I went to theater school together. Neither of us is currently employed to do theater, which should tell you something about getting a theater degree. But she has a very fancy job. She's a wonderful actress and a great friend and a thoughtful human being who really loves Outlander. And it was told me we shouldn't ask her about Sam Huon because she can't conduct herself like an adult if we talk about him. But she also
Neither
recently...
can I, though. I think I've proven that.
That's true. That's true. That's recorded in many episodes. But she also just got back from Scotland, from a lengthy trip in Scotland that she went because she... By the way, I realized I'd never mentioned this. I'm a Mackenzie. I probably should have said that at some point.
What?
Yeah, that's my heritage goes back to the ye old Mackenzies.
Scandalous.
And
Scandalo.
Beth has not yet seen the finale, so I can't say anything about the Mackenzies right now. But I'm a Mackenzie. But Beth is also Scottish in her heritage and just had I'm going to go back and check out my roots trip. And Julie is going to talk to her about it for just a second. And then next week, she's probably going to be back to do a season wrap-up with us before we talk to a bunch of dudes about the show. So take it away, Julie.
Oh, my God. So we're doing this thing where I'm reaching across the table to grab headphones. Okay. So Beth has been extra quiet this whole time and hasn't said anything.
I watch a lot of comedy podcasts where they have to wait, so I was just waiting.
We don't do that here.
Okay.
We don't do that. Anyway, here's Beth Locke. She's awesome. Allison gave her a great introduction. So Beth, why Scotland? Talk to me about why you went, what you saw, impressions.
Sure.
That was Allison fucking trying to catch a fucking Pokemon. She's just trying to get a Pokemon.
Information about fucking Beth's trip
Trying
to
to get a
Scotland.
Pokemon.
No, I just want to go to my home screen. What is the matter with you? No, Siri, shut up.
But Allison, you have to catch them all.
I'm done.
All right, sorry. So
yeah.
Beth, Scotland, go.
So for a year, I had been saving money every pay period, trying to make enough money to go over to Scotland. So little by little, I saved up enough to go out for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. But my mother was a McLean,
Mm-hmm.
and they were from the Western Highlands. And for years and years, she talked about being a McLean, and she was very proud of her heritage, and she loved being Scottish and a barbarian and a Highlander. And My sister and I actually, after she passed, she wanted to see Brave, but she didn't get to see Brave. So we were like, oh, we'll go see Brave together.
Yeah.
And so my oldest sister and I decided to go see Brave, which was the worst idea ever after your mom passes.
Oh, man.
So we basically, like, 2 grown adults ugly cried during all of Brave. Then got into a car, didn't talk to each other for a little bit, and I just went, that was the worst idea ever. I am so sorry. I decided we should do that. So the main things that she wanted to do was to go to the Isle of Mull, because that's where the McLean Castle is, the Duart Castle. And so I basically decided about 2 years after she passed that I was going to do that for her. But it took me a while to save the money to actually do that for her. So, yeah.
Where all did you go other than the Isle that you wanted to go to? Where else were you in Scotland?
So I started in London because she was also British. And I love London.
Yeah.
It's hard to be a history fanatic and not want to know all about London or be in the places that you read so much about. You want to go to the Tower of London because it's in almost every book that you ever read that is British based. And then I went to Edinburgh, Glasgow.
What did you think of Glasgow? Because I went to Edinburgh and had several days there and loved it. And I really didn't have that much time in Glasgow, but it was so different than Edinburgh that I was like, I don't like Glasgow.
I had a similar experience, but I also I had reached a point where I had eaten myself silly. I had been drinking pints every night, and I am not a normal drinker. So I was getting like
the haul you brought us today says different. Anyway.
Since I'm not like an everyday drinker, it was wearing me down. So by the time that I got to Glasgow, it was the second week, middle of the second week, and I was pooped. And and I missed friends and family. That's when it kind of started kicking in. Thankfully, I had a really nice host who was great. But at that point, Glasgow, because it wasn't as beautiful as, say, London or Edinburgh, it kind of like, meh.
It just, I didn't spend a lot of time there, but it just felt way more like concrete and like claustrophobic maybe, or like city, as opposed to Edinburgh, which you've got the beautiful castle on the hill and the rolling hills and all the art freaks everywhere.
It's intense hippie land.
And
I loved it because that's the lady who did our ghost tour in Edinburgh was like spot on.
Oh no.
She was great. Like exactly the kind of person you would think that would do a ghost tour in Edinburgh. She was she's
So
perfect.
did you make it to your ancestral castle?
I did. My mom used to love this Conan skit that he did about going back to Ireland, where he went to the Cliffs of Moher, where the O'Brien Castle was, and it was windy as
fuck. You can drop F-bombs all you want.
It was windy as fuck.
Damn.
And he just yells into the wind, I don't know why my ancestors left here. And my mom always like, that's what it'd be like if we went back to her castle. I know. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, okay, let's see if she's right. And we jumped onto the ferry to get there. And it was torrential rain and intense wind. And the part of me was sad because I wanted to be able to take pictures. But the other part of me was laughing inside. I'm like, you're absolutely right.
Why did my ancestors leave here? Well, that's great. Thank you so much. Do you have any parting thoughts before we talk a little bit about Outlander? I mean, obviously, we're not going to spoil the finale for you, and you're coming back.
Talk about Sam.
Oh, yeah. Well, she said it made her uncomfortable.
I can say this. And unfortunately, it throws a dear friend of mine kind of under the bus. But I'm
Fuck
sorry.
that dear friend. They're not here. You don't have to say their name.
She doesn't watch.
In fact,
she doesn't listen just yet.
In fact, why don't you call that dear friend Bob?
Bob. Okay, Bob. So Bob and I have been watching the show together, and the funny thing is the way that I got her to start actually watching with me was I had already blown through a couple, and I finally got to the wedding. And she came in during the middle of the wedding, and I was sitting there, and she came in and started like talking, and I was just like, ooh, and then they started like coming together, and she's like, what's happening? I'm like, shut up, I've been waiting for this the whole time.
Just a word to Janine really quick. Janine, just because you've been listening the whole time, right? Janine is going to watch. We're going to talk more about Janine's experiences actually watching Outlander, because spoiler alert, Janine watched the finale with us. But the wedding, which is the
like halfway through season 1
episode of season 1, is like 80% doing it.
Yes.
And by that I mean it's actually like 30% doing it and like 50% foreplay, which is how sex should really actually be. And then 20% story.
Yeah. So that was the episode that Bob walked in on.
So she finally.
They got to the 30%.
I finally snagged her, and she started watching the show with me, and so we got hooked. And granted, the only reason I started reading them and watching them was because people. When I told them I was going to Scotland, like, you have to. I'm like, okay. I'm
you're
very
relatively
pliable.
you're relatively new to all this. Now,
Yes.
you know, Allison's read all the books.
Yes.
I read none of them and
4,
don't plan
right?
on ever
It's
doing
4?
them.
I'm on 4 right now.
I'm never going to read them. I'm just going to watch the show so that I can be the point counterpoint thing.
Yeah, she says that now.
Nah, man.
No, I do like that because I feel like I am getting a lot more because I have read them.
Mm-hmm.
And some
Well,
of the
Allison
episodes, I'm
knows-
like, ooh, if you haven't read them, I feel like you're missing something.
Allison knows way more about when things are different and whether or not, like, how it affected the producer's choice to change things or the writer's choice of how to change things. To me, I'm just watching a show, you know, so I do miss a certain level. But so what are your, so you got Bob in, you've been watching it.
Bob's in.
And then what happened? What's the Sam Heughan thing?
So the Sam Heughan thing is, so Bob also works for Blue Man Group.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a Blue Man here in Chicago who is Scottish, who's a good friend of ours. And we were sitting down with him. He was kind of helping me think of some things to do in Glasgow because he lived in Glasgow for a while, going to college there. And so while Bob was in the bathroom, Blue Man, I'm not going to say his name either, Blue Man let it slip that he actually went to college with Sam.
Okay.
So I, inside, was screaming.
Shitting yourself.
And I'm like, that's really interesting.
On the outside, I'm mildly interested.
Yeah, so inside I'm screaming. I can feel how flush I am. I can feel how red and excited I am. But I'm
On
like,
your
I'm
face.
trying to just like, oh, this is just interesting news. This isn't shattering my whole existence.
Whatever.
Right now.
I'm the cool girl.
Yeah, I'm cool. I haven't like been obsessively
Like looking at him on
Stalking this
Facebook
guy.
and like, whatever. Whatever.
So then Bob comes out of the bathroom
Mhm.
and sits down next to me, and I was like, Blue Man has a very interesting piece of information that you should know about. And he basically let her know that he went to school with him.
Mhm.
She starts openly sobbing.
No way.
Just instant crying.
Bob
Instant crying. Bob's crying right now.
Oh, wow.
And now she feels embarrassed. And so how she fixes her embarrassment of openly crying in a bar after finding out that Blue Man went to college
School.
with Sam was she just yells, "I'm so sorry. He's the only thing I have right now." So she's openly weeping and yelling.
Oh, God.
And the thing is, in my mind, that was what I was thinking too. But she actually openly did it. So God bless her.
I love that she was not going to watch this with you and then was drawn in and then was so pulled in. We have guys that are watching now because they have to be prepared to do the Dudelander thing that we're going to do. And a lot of them bitch and gripe for the first half of the first season.
Just Kevin bitches and gripes.
Well, I mean, Kevin, he's a bitch. But then they get to a certain point in season 1 where they're like, wait a minute, this show is actually pretty good. And I think it's really interesting because there's this weird taboo or kind of like shade on a romance fantasy, but it's so well done that it doesn't matter. People get pulled in. And I love that Bob just couldn't stop it. And also, Sam Heughan is like preternaturally attractive. Like there's nothing you could do. He's just fucking smoking hot.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, Blue Man, because he knew him, was kind of wanting to shit on him, and so we were trying to keep it under wrap, especially after Crying. We're trying to just kind of brush all that under the carpet.
I'm just stuffing my face full with buffalo shrimp now. Okay.
But he's just like, he's too pretty. He's just too, and I'm like, oh no, that's not pretty. That is like,
let it out. Let it out.
I can't.
Oh my God.
I'm too. The thing is, I'm not Catholic, but I'm still like dogma Catholic, so I can't express my sexuality openly.
So he's fucking sex on a platter.
Oh my God, yes.
Yes.
So,
okay, there you go. I can be your sex translator, no problem.
So he had mentioned that he's like, oh well, he's not that attractive, and so we were trying not to be
like
crazy.
You dumb.
We were trying not to be crazy, so we were just kind of like, oh yeah, well,
okay, fine. I mean,
and he's like, and he's not even that great of an actor, and we're like, but I think he's doing great. He does a lot of too much eyes,
a little bit too much eyes
sometimes, but I'm all about them.
He's very good in the part, and he has certain episodes in which he does amazing work. Overall, there's no way he can stand up to like Tobias Menzies. Like, he's very good though, and you know what? There's never another person on the face of the planet that they could have cast in that part that was going to work that way.
No,
so
he's perfect.
He's perfect for it.
Also, he's great in the finale.
Yes, he's very good in the finale.
I feel like whoever he's with really determines what you get from him, because I think he steps up to the level of whoever's with him.
That's interesting.
Which is why he's great with Pamplemousse.
I was going to say, because to me, it's really interesting that Duncan Lacroix is the one that raises him up so high a lot of the times, because scenes with the two of them are so good, and Duncan Lacroix hasn't done dick.
Have you seen his IMDb page, Beth?
I love that guy.
I know, because
the
it's
thing
just
is,
good.
I remember enjoying Murtaugh in the book, but I am madly in love with Murtaugh in the TV.
And it's him. It's Duncan, because Duncan is so good, and his kind of dedication to the character is unquestionable, and he's
living it.
Slow burn in the first season. Towards the end, you really get it, and then in the second season, you're like, nope, this guy is the best of all humanity. Like, he's the best.
We'll talk more about all of this, especially the Pamplemousse, next week with Beth, assuming she can watch the finale between now and then. And we're going to start talking about the way we're going to divide these episodes is we're going to do just a teeny tiny bit about 1968 in this episode, and then we're going to talk about Culloden. And then we're going to do a separate episode. They'll be released at about the same time, maybe a day split, where we talk about just 1968. But we're going to start that shortly. But Beth, thank you.
Our first patron.
I love it. You got to keep it going.
I'm in.
We're going to tell you, we'll be telling you for the next, don't get me wrong, we drink a lot, but we're going to be telling you for the next several episodes about the beer that Beth brought us, which should tell you how much beer Beth brought us.
Beer? She fucking brought the beer.
We should talk about the first one right now. The very first one we're going to drink is the Dragonfly IPA.
For obvious fucking reasons.
From Upland Brewing Company.
In where?
But get used to hearing Beth, because she'll be back next week.
Bloomington, Indiana, Midwest, USA. So that'll be the first one that she brought us. Thank you, Beth. Thanks for taking the time out.
A song of a lass that is gone, say could that lass be mine? Weary of soul, she sailed on a day over the sea to sky.
No, this thing fucking sucks.
I told you.
Hold on.
Julie was shaming me about my inability to open a Dragonfly IPA, and it took her a couple times too. But now I got one, and now she's gonna open one for herself. So that was Beth, and isn't she lovely? Isn't she wonderful? Isn't she special? I don't remember the rest of the lyrics to that song.
That's a song?
Yeah, isn't she lovely?
You know what? I actually have a story about that song.
Isn't she? Not right now.
Just very briefly.
Okay.
A friend of mine in Portland was roommates with the guy who was the son of the obstetrician who birthed Stevie Wonder's daughter that he wrote that song about.
Oh, God, that's great.
So on his office wall was the gold record that Stevie Wonder sent him of Isn't She Lovely?
Oh, that's wonderful.
Because the obstetrician said it when she was born. Isn't she lovely?
Oh, that's delightful.
That is delightful.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say that while that story is wonderful and it
This
made me
is
feel
really
great
good.
things, when I said, oh, that's great, it was actually about Upland Brewing Company's Dragonfly IPA. Thank you, Beth Locke.
Thank you, Beth Locke. Also, I didn't notice this, but on the Dragonfly it says just the right amount of bite.
Oh, and you know what? That's a really good description of this episode. Mm-hmm. So just restating, the way that we're going to do this is we're going to talk just very briefly about 1968. Then we're going to talk about all of the Culloden stuff with the timelines and the 818 and the 828 and the 837 and all that shit. We're just going to talk through Culloden. Then we're going to stop. We're both going to pee. Janine's going to pee. And maybe take a dump. I don't know. I don't know your life.
I don't know.
Probably.
And we're gonna
Bitch, I don't know your life.
we have a little counter full of guacamole, hummus, some kind of cheese, and some tortilla chips. And then we're going to come back and we're going to do episode 2, and that's going to be just 1968. And you have no idea how many things I have to say about those amazing pants that Brianna was wearing. So that one will be a little bit longer. And that makes sense to me because transitioning into 1968, this was heavily weighted toward 1968, don't you think?
Yes, I do. It opened in 1968. It was very weird and unsettling because it was the beginning of an episode of The Avengers on a black and white television. And it was kind of like, what? And Neil was watching with us and he goes, oh, The Avengers. And I was like, oh yeah.
Hey, we should also say a thing. In addition to Neil watching with us, I want to raise my beer to Janine, who, because we thought it would be hilarious and also cool, and also we just really like him, if the first episode of Outlander that Janine ever watched was the season 2 finale. So you've been listening, so you know that we'll talk about things and something terrible will happen, and from like microphone, whatever, computer table distance away, you'll hear Janine go, what? Right? And so Janine watched with us yesterday. Mm-hmm. Janine, do you have anything you want to say?
This was a hard intro, but the most comfortable way to start a show after listening to people talk about it for such a long time.
I think that Janine was not prepared for our snack game.
Oh, yeah. So a thing you should know about Julie and I is we don't fuck around with munchies.
No. Man, if I'm going to be watching an hour of television in my house, I need at least 3 cheeses.
We need a spread. We need a real spread.
So Janine walked in and I had all this popcorn and stuff, and then Allison showed up and she brought more shit, and he was like, what? And we're like, this is how we do it.
And then the salmon dip that was there.
Oh,
was
that
just-
salmon dip.
Allison brought the salmon dip. It was good. So Janine was with us, Neil was with us, Allison and I were there. Episode starts.
And I want you to know that Janine gasped in all the appropriate places. And he had feelings in all the appropriate places.
and
it
had
was
questions. Very smart questions.
lots of questions. It was very joyful. Anyway.
So it opens with the Avengers, and you're like, oh, well, we're not in Scotland anymore. Or we are in Scotland, but not the Scotland that we've considered to be Scotland.
Still in Scotland. Any when?
Any win. We're not in the old win. We're in the new win.
Oh, time gets weird.
And then we pull back out, and it's all these kids in this like old-fashioned living room watching the Avengers on an old like black and white television. And pull back even further, and then you see
A member of the Mumford brothers.
He really did.
Mumford and Sons.
He looked a little bit like Mumford and or his son.
And or his son.
He was very attractive, probably mid-30s.
Give me the name of the actor's name.
Bearded.
Tell me about Roger.
Richard Rankin.
Richard Rankin. He looks good.
Very good looking gentleman.
He's cute, but
Also,
he's not
he did
like,
a really nice job. We'll talk about that more next week.
He's, you know what? He is handsome, but he is not like,
Sam Heughan handsome?
yeah, no, I mean, that's a hard row to hoe.
Yeah.
But he looks very sad.
He did a great job.
We realize that it is a funeral in the house, and they've got all the kids in the dining room watching the Avengers to get them out of the way. So it's a wake. 1968, Scotland, wake. We don't know where it is yet, but we're about to find out.
But we know it in 1968, and there's a stranger. And also, if you watched the previously on, you know they inexplicably showed you a tiny child holding an airplane. So maybe that tiny child's coming back. Maybe.
Mm-hmm. It took me a minute to figure it out, though, until it had been explicitly laid out that this was the Reverend's funeral.
It was, Reverend Wakefield, R.I.P.
R.I.P. Remember him? Of the kindness of being
Very
awesome.
kindness. And then you also learn that Mrs. Graham died previously. And you know what? That means we're probably never going to see Mrs. Graham again. So I think we should give it up for that actress because she was fucking great.
Because that scene after Claire came back was one of the best scenes in the show.
Also when she reads her palm in the pilot.
Yep.
That scene was excellent. So really, just a really, really great scene.
So the Reverend is dead. So then we realize that this handsome Mumford and or son that we've seen is fucking, what's his name, Robert?
Roger Wakefield.
Roger Wakefield, the little kid that was always like running underfoot with his stupid little airplane when Frank was trying to get it together that his wife had gotten impregnated by another man's seed.
In a different century.
In a different time.
Also, if you remember back in the D, Roger was adopted. So the Reverend and Frank have this beautiful conversation about how a child readily bows to the reality he's given. So essentially saying like, hey, adoption is great. It's basically the Reverend's argument. Only Frank decides the best way to do it. And this is not a judgment on his thoughts because I am not adopted. Julie's not adopted. I don't know. Well, actually, Julie was adopted.
Well, I was sort of adopted, but it was weird.
Okay.
It was within
Aaron,
the family.
Were you adopted?
No.
Okay. So, but I have friends who are adopted and they have feelings about them, about their adoption process that mean a lot. So, like, this is not me prescribing my opinion on adoption in any way. But what the Reverend says is that children readily accept the reality they're presented with. And so Roger just was cool with the Reverend being his dad. He was, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Plus,
whatever.
The Reverend was
Awesome.
fucking cool.
Yeah, the Reverend was great.
He was just a good dad, a kind man who had books on everything and all sorts of cool places for the kid to go play. And so, like, Roger grew up learning things and becoming a sensitive Mumford and Son.
Yes. Mumford or Son.
Mumford and or Son.
We'll talk more about Roger next week, but I just want to say I really love that dude. He did a really great job.
So it's the wake of Reverend Wakefield. We understand that that's happening when he gives the toast, and then all of a sudden the camera pans, and who do we see?
And I want to, let's talk about who Julie saw. This is my experience of sitting next to Julie on a couch watching this finale. The camera is focused on a complete stranger, and then the focus shifts to somebody in the background. And I go, and then I'm sitting next to Neil, and Neil goes, and Julie doesn't do anything. And then like 3 minutes pass, and Julie goes, oh my God! Because it was Claire.
Yeah, it was Claire. And you know what? She didn't even really look that different. She just had different clothes on and had like a gray streak in her hair.
Different. She didn't look that different, except she looked very different.
I think that I reacted to the point where they showed her and then you realized that was her daughter. I think that that's where I freaked out.
They hadn't shown Brianna. It was still her.
Because Claire was sitting in the chair and then she looked over and you saw Roger like look at her and then look this way and you saw this hot ass redhead and then I was like, oh, that's Claire's daughter. So I think maybe that was the moment where I had that. Okay. But also, I wasn't. I mean,
No,
who
you
expects
did not recognize her at
who
first.
expects Claire to be at Revan Wakefield's wake?
And to have that sweet blowout.
She did have a fucking sweet blowout though.
Yeah, with those those Bonnie Ray gray streaks.
Yeah, I've got to talk about that eye makeup later.
Later, next episode.
Next episode.
But for right now, then it's Dylan.
But wait, Roger and Bree look at each other. Brianna look at each other, and okay, fine.
Okay, so that's gonna happen.
Diddle.
And for the rest of this episode, we're going to talk about colliding.
Diddle. We're gonna be in
We're
diddle.
going to diddle. So, which is lucky because we don't have that much time left, but they honestly don't spend that much time in the past.
It's action packed, but it's less time than they spend in
And you know
1968.
what? As a person who read the books, and I'll say this, we'll probably do some episode at some point that's just the two of us talking about things that are different from the books from the show. Just because there's a whole thing we can talk about. And I won't spend too much time on it. But going into this episode, expected that I feel like I shouldn't say it because it's a spoiler, but I'm just going to assume that anyone that's listening to this episode has recognized that they're going to get spoiled on the plot.
We've done it every time.
You too saw it already. So when Dougal dies, spoiler, when Dougal dies, I expected that was going to happen in like the last 20 minutes.
Oh, as opposed to like the first 15.
Like almost the first thing that happens.
Yep. So we flash back and we're back on Culloden or pre-battle at Culloden, and all the Scottish dudes just look like hammered shit. Nobody's eaten enough. They're cold. They're wet. They're disgusting.
And Charles
Jamie
has
looks
some
like
shit to say about God.
Jamie looks like shit. Jamie's like, dude, BPD, we are not ready. And BPD's like, mark me. Cheers.
Cheers. The only time.
The only we were ready. but it
Janine was
only the
very
one time.
excited that it happened even once.
Yeah.
He's like, mark me, you're my Thomas. You doubt me because you haven't seen anything yet, but blessed are the believers who believe without doubting, but believe without seeing. And it's like, and Jamie's like, but I know what happens.
My interpretation was this: I would fight this, but I'm pretty sure that I don't have the physical energy because I am starved.
I'm so hungry.
I haven't eaten anything.
So BPD.
Also, I haven't been laid in like 7 episodes.
For like fucking 2 years, it feels like. So fucking BPD throws that fucking gauntlet down and leaves, and we're like, oh crap, we're gonna fight. And then Claire comes up to Jamie.
Although that is a season wrap on Andrew Gower. Cheers.
Cheers to BPD.
Mark him.
Mark him. You know what? He did a great job.
He really did.
So he's out. Jamie's like, hey, Claire, psst, psst. This is happening. There's nothing I can do to stop it. And yes, I know it's today. Like today is the day he is going to march. And Claire's like, wait. There's one more thing we can do. Not here. Not here. Let's go somewhere more private. Not here. So just like a bitch, she takes it somewhere private.
Just like a bitch.
We got to whisper about
You
it,
know
right?
what? I wrote the word bitch, and I have no idea what it was about. But I'm pretty sure it wasn't that. I'm pretty sure it was something else. I'm pretty sure someone said it was about doubting Thomas. It was, bitch, I ain't no doubting Thomas.
It's like,
That was what I was thinking.
So Claire takes Jamie into the house. What is this? It's like some lord's manor or whatever that they've taken
It's
over.
a castle of some kind. If I had the book in front of me, I could tell you.
So-
I really did try to listen to parts of the audiobook again today, but listening, as you've heard, listening to Outlander on audio cassette while trying to play Pokemon Go at the same time, that's a tough road to hoe.
So she takes him. I have thoughts, but I'm going to let it go. So she takes him into the house, whatever it is, the manor, and you can see all these boxes up against the wall. So it's very clear that the Scottish army, as it is, has taken over this place.
And most of this shit, I have to say, is straight from the book.
Right.
The way it happens is different. But
So she brings him into this room, and she's like, the only way we're going to be able to stop this battle is to kill Prince Charles. And Jamie is like, and Allison and I were like, just the same thing that Pamplemousse has been telling you.
Yeah, Myrta's idea, idiots. That was
so long ago.
that was a real and longer ago than it is for us because of jumps in time and shit. So what we were saying it like a month and a half ago, Myrta was saying it like 9 months ago. Mm-hmm. Oh, longer than 9. Oh God, longer than 9 months.
So Claire is finally like, this is all we can do. Allow me to show you how I can kill him without him even knowing it. poisoning. I mean, obviously. Here's this stuff called yellow jasmine. Ting, ting, which we just saw her use on Column. And then she explains to Jamie that she used it on Column, and Jamie freaks out for a minute.
Gave it to Colin.
Gave it to Colin. Well, because he asked for it, to be fair.
Well, totally. But because I know we have people listening who haven't seen the show. Hey, Ruth, what's up?
What up, Ruth?
She doesn't poison Colin. She gives Colin poison so he can off himself.
He asks for it anyway.
Yes.
So she has to explain that to Jamie because Jamie, in his starvitude and dirtitude, freaks out for a second. And it's like, you killed my uncle. And she's like, wait, hold up. Hold up, bitch. He was going to die no matter what. He begged me. He asked me to help him. So I gave him this thing.
Well,
Janine!
His issue was more that he committed suicide.
Right.
And that was the crime.
He's going...
And that's
right.
a mortal sin.
That's a mortal sin. But in the last episode, when she said, you understand that this is a sin, do you remember what his response was? What's another sin to a sinner?
Oh, that's
So he didn't give a fuck. He was like...
he gave 0 fucks.
He was like, kill me,
also,
Billy.
that guy, cheers. He was the best.
Kill me, Billy. So she explains to him, this was going to happen no matter what, so I did it. Here's how it works. The person ingests it, and it's like they fall asleep and kind of pass away, so I can put it in his tea. And then all of a sudden, you get a split screen and you see.
Well, there's a little teeny tiny moment before where the guy whose name we've been making up the whole time, Lancashire?
No, Pig Farmer. No, that comes. Doesn't that come after you see Gil?
Rupert's last. It's Pig Farmer, Gilf, Rupert.
Yeah, Pig Farmer comes through because he gives them orders, right?
Ross?
No.
Ross.
Scott Kyle.
Yeah. So he's like,
Hey, we gotta
hey,
move.
it's time. You gotta do some military shit. And they're like, okay.
Okay.
And then Dougal, all right, this is an important moment. To Gilf.
To Gilf.
It hurt to watch this.
I know. Janine, it's a rough episode for Janine to have watched first, although I will say, giving an introduction to Outlander to a dude and having that episode be an episode that basically starts with maybe the best fight scene in the history of the series.
Well,
Yeah.
I have a background in stunts and sword fighting, so like watching that too, I was like, this is so well done. It was just the best.
It was
such a good
so. I mean, the thing that really blows my mind about it, Julie and Janine, is that it was a centerpiece scene for the episode, and it was in like minute 7.
And it was so short, but it was so effective. So what happens is Ross comes in, says his shit, leaves, and then Claire and Jamie continue to plot about how to poison Bonnie
And
Prince
decide they're
douchebag.
not gonna do it.
And then they're like, oh, maybe not. But then you see Dougal is listening in, and he hears just enough. And we know he's the Sonny Corleone. We know he's the
Well,
hothead.
he believes. He really believes, and he believes in the BPD, which none of our other favorites believe in the BPD. They all, because they don't know about time travel,
Right.
So like Claire and Jamie and Myrta, I guess Fergus doesn't, but Fergus is what
You're
he's
like-
very wise.
You down with BPD? No.
No, you know me.
So you just see little shots of Gilf listening in, of Dougal listening into them, and he garners enough information to understand that they're talking about poisoning without actually like listening to the entire thing that they're saying, which is a very Sunny thing. And he comes in all fucking testosteroned out. He is ready. He's like, you are a
And
traitor.
in grief, it looks a lot like the scene in season 1 where his wife died, who he didn't love, because they didn't live together. I mean, maybe he had a fondness for her, right? But they didn't live together. They didn't have children together because he doesn't have any heirs. She lived somewhere else. He lived at Castle Leoch and was in love with Galis Duncan. Mm-hmm. Next
We'll get there.
episode. And lost his fucking mind when she died. Like slapping himself in the face. You remember all that shit, Julie?
Yeah.
Lost his goddamn mind. It was a lot like that, only it was because Jamie had betrayed him.
Well, also remember that his brother has just died, and whether or not he heard, Allison and I talked about this, it's unclear whether or not he heard Claire talking about the fact
he heard all of it.
that she had used this to help his brother move on. So he hears that. He hears the fact that they're going to use it on BPD, who he believes in, and he loses his fucking mind.
And I should say this, in the book, I mean, I tried to listen to this, but Pokemon Go was too distracting. So I believe that there is actually it's certain. In the books, Claire gives Colum a poison, and he dies before he can use it. And that's very clear because it happens in like a ball. It's very dramatic. And there's no, like, it's before Colum says he doesn't want to join. So that means that Dougal can commit the entire Clan Mackenzie to it, which negates the whole scene in the last episode, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, it makes all of that shit really complicated, right? It makes it more complicated than this because in this case, Claire allowed Colin to kill himself,
right?
Which is very straightforward, which doesn't happen in the book. She does, and then he dies anyway. And so no one knows but her, including Jamie. He doesn't even know.
Well, she tells him here, and obviously we talked about that. He freaks out. But really, the freak out belongs to Gilf in this scene because he really just fucking, you know what? Truly, the James Caan of this series. It's operatic. He can't contain himself. His grief is too large. He can't hold it in his body, his well-formed, muscular, masculine body. And he just releases it the only way he knows how, which is to try to kill fucking Jamie.
And Julie, do you think it's the best fight scene in Outlander?
I think it's one of the best fight scenes I've ever seen in a television show. Yeah. Because it is real. Yeah. It's not staged. It doesn't feel like, oh, I get this much distance. I get this much. It's very close. It's in this tiny room. There's the sword, but then the sword goes away and then it's a knife. So it's very like intimate.
It's a dark.
They're very close to each other. You kind of can't tell where the dark is at times. Yeah. You can't tell who's holding it, which makes it very more stressful, more like I don't know.
It transfers the stress into us very quickly.
Right. I watch a lot of movies and a lot of television for my jobs, many of them. Hey, I'm going to be unemployed in like 8 weeks. Do you need someone to write about shit for you?
8 weeks,
I'm
8
ready.
months. 8 weeks?
8 months. 8 weeks.
God damn it.
It's fine. Everything's fine. Anyway, everything's great. So I write about a lot of things. And I will tell you that when you have to watch things for work, you get desensitized to the big shit, right? And the two people who are currently sitting at this table with me can tell you that I put both of my arms above my head and one of my feet on the table and halfway stood up and just kept going like...
Kelly, who you guys might remember from earlier in the season, watched it on her own and said that she had to watch this fight through her fingers.
It's one of the best. I mean, it was just brutal. Maybe the best fight I've ever seen on television. Certainly one of the best fights that I've ever seen in any medium.
It was just so real.
Well, and I will say too that the fight was great, but truly the thing that put a nail in the coffin,
Claire,
was Claire's involvement.
All right, so let's talk about this moment, which is not in the books and which I loved.
But wait, you got to lead up to it. So they have this incredibly intimate knife fight
where they keep like biting each other's fingers and having to cut their hands when they're turning the dirk around.
It's intense. And then Dougal gets Jamie on the ground, and Claire's like, "Oh, I have to be involved now." And Claire picks up this box and throws it over Dougal's head to knock him off, and he rolls off of Jamie, and then Jamie gets on top and has the power here, and he takes the knife, and Dougal's like, and then Jamie turns it around and points it at his fucking heart. But Jamie is so hungry and so tired and maybe so sad that he can't. Like,
I mean, they're very evenly matched. And the thing that's important to remember is that Dougal taught Jamie how to fight, right? Like Brian Fraser, who gets less attention in the books other than when he died when he was watching Jamie being whipped, which we again will talk about in the next episode because they went to Fort William. But he learned fighting from Dougal. And so he learned there's that great scene in season 1 where they are first playing, I don't know, whatever British sport where they have like hockey sticks that aren't hockey sticks.
Oh, was that fucking cricket? They were were they doing like lawn hockey
They
or
were
like
playing
cricket
something
or
and then they punched each other.
just beat
I
the
don't know.
shit out of each other?
I have no idea. Anyway,
But
they
it's like-
learned from each other, right? So Jamie learned how to
It's
fight from
almost
Dougal.
like he killed his dad.
Oh, no, it's totally like he killed his dad because he learned how to fight for him. So, in addition to like emotionally, that's complicated. Practically, they have the exact same skill set.
Right. But then Claire gives him the assist and they get it done.
Literally helps him carry that weight.
She tips the scale.
Right. She did tip the scale. I feel that I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that Dougal was so grief crazed and hungry and just for shit that he didn't say some fucking horrible things.
He said horrible things.
To Katrina.
I will say this to Julie's this. If the show ends up being anything like the books, they grieve Dougal forever.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Because they know that the circumstances basically put him in a position where he could only do the thing that he did. And so they grieve Dougal for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I haven't finished the series yet because it's not done yet.
Right.
She's still writing. But through the current books, they continue to grieve Dougal. He comes up a lot.
so
But to Graham McTavish,
to Graham McTavish, to the guild. You know
God
what?
damn,
Fucking handsome old man.
he did a great fucking job. He's on Preacher now, which I haven't watched yet, but he's on Preacher now. So if you're thinking like, man, I need some gilf, he's on Preacher.
Which I hear is also wonderful.
Yes,
Cool.
I hear that too.
Well, he's just a good actor and he's very nice to look at as an older man. So, you know, if you want to like expand your palette and like
But God,
think of
one of the-
grandpas I'd like to fuck, he's the one.
Well, hence gilf.
Yeah.
But one of the best fight scenes in the history of television, I think.
It was really good. It was so brief and short and brutal. It didn't last for forever, but it was very.
It felt like it lasted for
was-
a million
It was
years.
so solid.
It was just really strong.
Janine
And
says.
stunt guy says. So here's the bag. If you want to watch it, just watch that fight scene. If you don't feel like you're like, I don't want to watch this show, watch that fight scene and it will boil into a like tiny minute for you why this show is so
I
awesome.
mean, I have to assume that if you're listening, you either are already watching or have decided that you can live vicariously through us.
Please don't do that.
Don't. You should really watch it. But if what you
some-
really need is to convince your significant other that they should watch, that might not be a good place to start.
Yeah, because it's a
really
great
good
fight sequence.
I feel like
Janine?
we should have like I feel like we should somehow contribute a supercut of all the boning and fighting.
Well, it would have to be specific boning, wouldn't
It
it?
would have to be specific boning because the boning that we're going to talk about is not.
Oh, fair.
Not this boning, for sure.
That's the worst bottle opener.
So,
This thing sucks.
Yeah.
So they kill. Julie is opening a beer. I'm going to keep talking while it's
Keep
happening.
talking.
So they killed Dougal, and then
Rupert.
Oh, and
Rupert.
He makes the first ever statement about missing an eye that is not a joke in the history of his life.
Rupert straight up walks in, sees Jamie over the dead Dougal, sees Claire behind him, maybe sees a knife sticking out of his chest.
He sees.
It's very clear.
He sees all with one eye.
He sees all with one eye, which means that there was a lot to see. So he walks in and he is pissed to the ground. Just like, well, I didn't even think about this. Dougal was his clansman. Dougal was his leader. Dougal was the chief of his clan.
chieftain. Well, because Colin died.
Right.
So he was already the war chief. And then Rupert, played by
Grant O'Rourke.
Grant O'Rourke, it's like, you killed my chieftain. Because after Colin died, Dougal was the chieftain.
Right. And so Rupert has this great scene where he's just like,
it's
no,
so good.
I hope I never have to
You know
see
what?
you again.
There's a pretty decent chance that we will never see that actor again. So here's another cheers.
Oh, fair.
That guy fucking killed it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna. My greatest, most sorrowful feelings are gonna be reserved for the person we may also never see again. We'll talk about later. But I know, and that has nothing to do with the book because it's complicated. But Rupert, he killed it.
You're
So
talking about Pamplemousse, right?
of course. But
Who are you?
in the book, it's a different character who catches him. But regardless, he gets a 2-hour window to say, like...
Jamie says to him.
Oh, it's wonderful. This is also not in the book. In honor of the friendship I used to feel for you, which you've now murdered as surely as you've murdered my chieftain... I will
Snap,
give you
bitch.
2 hours, and then I will fucking kill you. That part, that last part, that's paraphrasing, but it's not that far off.
It's pretty real.
It's funny because, like, I remember that moment so vividly because he was so good, and he was like, everything was cool.
We were doing good, and then this, and now I will fucking kill you.
Yeah.
You have 2 hours. I will give you 2 hours.
Because we used to, a long time ago, we used to be friends, but I haven't thought of you lately at all.
All right, Veronica Mars. So Rupert leaves, but we know we only have 2 hours.
And that's a season wrap on Rupert. Cheers. Grand work.
Good job.
So then Jamie's like, I gotta get some shit done. Here's his agenda. Take care of my business, take care of my wife, take care of getting dead. End of list.
Yeah.
So let's take care of our business, shall we? So we know from 1968, which we'll talk about in the next episode, that he signs what the show calls a deed of cessation, and which the audiobook calls a deed of Saffron. And so I'm just going to call a deed of something, which basically says I'm going to date this to a year ago.
For Lollybrock.
Yeah,
I'm going to
and
say, here's where it
A year
goes.
ago, I decided I was going to transfer my property rights to my nephew, Jamie, who's a little bitty pretty one. And then...
Pretty one.
Thanks, Julie. And that way, the property will not be seized because it was before I was a trader. So he gets Claire, and this
needs
particular
witnesses.
document will come back in the next episode. He gets Claire and Myrta
Pamplemousse.
to sign it, and then he hands it. And then, this is important, Claire cries one time
Just
tear.
one tear. Just one fucking tear, like Ghost, like Demi Moore and Ghost. Just
Claire
like boop,
Beecham.
boop. Claire Beecham from
So then he sends Fergus and does like a great bit of psychology.
I love you
on
like
him.
my own child.
And it's incredibly important that this reaches my sister. I trust no one but you, which is both true. And second, both. That's
Whatevs.
Which is first true. Second, a great way to get Fergus the fuck away from this battle where everyone's gonna die. So he says, I trust you to get this to Lallybrock because it's worth more than my life or yours. Which is true because we know from the 1968 half that Lallybrock lasted through generations of Frasers. So
We will find that out in the next episode, but obviously he made it right. But Fergus is like, no, I will not leave.
I will not leave
my
you, my
master. I will not leave my master.
I have disrespect for women, but still I will remain with you.
But then he's like, I loved you like my son. And just like my son,
You're like my own son.
I'll ask you to do this favor
You must go
for
to
me.
Madame Fraser.
And so,
And he
boom.
goes, and it's wonderful, and that's a season wrap on Fergus.
Fergus, bye Fergus.
And he's wonderful, and off he goes. So the deed is signed, and then Jamie says, hey, I'm going to take Claire to safety, and what I need you to do,
Myrta. Pamplemousse.
is take all the Lallybrock men, group them up like we're going to fight, and then lead them to a place where they can get GTFO.
Yeah, so pretend like we're going so that BPD thinks we're going and then hide.
Because the battle's already lost, which I think everyone who's listening can agree. Even if your only point of reference is us talking about Jamie Fraser, I think that you can understand that he's not a fucking coward. So this is because that battle is going to be lost no matter what, because he's got a wife who's a fucking time traveler. So he knows. So the battle is going to be lost. So he wants to preserve his land and his tenants and all these things.
So he sends them off.
So he says, Myrta, lead these people away. And Myrta says, yeah, sure, I'll lead these people away. And then, Julie, I'm going to hold your hand for a second. I want to come back to die with you.
I will come back and fight with you.
Die with you.
What, fight and die? Because
Die.
they both expect to die. So,
Janine, how did you feel about that?
You know, it's one of those things where, like, I've been waiting to see Pamplemousse in action for a while now, and that was the best possible way to see him.
that's how he is all the time.
Yeah.
He's so good.
It's how he is all the
Because
time.
it was a smirk. It wasn't like an outright statement of saying, I'm going to die with you.
It wasn't
like,
weepy.
It was very just like, I'm like, I got this, and then I'll come back. Because, doesn't he say something like a death near you is
I'll
not...
die by your side.
And that's not like a worthless death, something like
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
And you can see that Jamie is pissed about it, and then he can see in the Pamplemousse's eyes
That there's no stopping it, yeah.
And I actually think this is really smart, and we'll get into this in 1968. But because we are seeing this episode through Claire's eyes, Claire's and whatever omniscient narrator is watching Brianna and Roger, we don't know what happens after Jamie leaves Claire at Craig Nadoon. So we'll find that out next season, I guess. Culloden and what happens at Culloden is our cliffhanger. The only things we know about Culloden come from history books.
Right.
So, and that's the last we see of Myrta. And I sincerely
You know what?
hope he's back.
Season 2, because
Fingers crossed.
I
God, he
think
was so good.
he was the MVP of season 2.
I agree.
There were so many great, like, no. There were
If
so
you
many
include
great.
Faith, maybe it's Katrina.
Everybody's gotten a good.
Maybe they're tied. Can they be tied?
Man, I don't know.
Well, Faith was the best episode of season 2. Well, you know what? Next week we're doing a season 2 wrap up. We will have this debate.
Okay, we'll have this
Great.
debate. Fine. So Jamie's like, take them in, hide somewhere. I've got to protect my wife, which means she's got to make good on her promise to touch the stone and get the fuck out before all this shit happens. So it's her and Jamie, and they go up to Craig Nadoon.
Oh, well, and she fights really hard before they even go. She says, I would rather stay here and die with you. And he says, yeah, but remember how you're knocked up?
Remember how you're pregnant? And she's like, what? And he's like, you haven't had your courses since blah, blah, blah. And Allison and I are like, Jamie pays attention.
Yep. Jamie
Jamie's-
knows how long it's been since the last time she had
Does
a period.
Jamie have a period tracker? Because that's something that MRAs
No, but you know
have.
what? Maybe if you're... No, I have a period tracker. I am female.
Yeah, but what if dudes have them to see, when's my bitch gonna be a bitch? No. Really? That's not what Jamie
I'm not
wants.
sure that's a thing. No, what Jamie
Oh,
is
that's
a...
totally a thing.
I see it being a
That's
thing.
totally a
I've
thing.
never
No,
thought
what
about that,
Jamie wants... Jamie is a farmer, so he knows when... I don't know. I'm assuming he knows when, like, cows are fertile or
No,
some shit.
he just wants to know if she is
He
pregnant.
pays attention because he loves her.
He wants to know if she's pregnant after they lost their baby. Like
Yeah.
he just wants to know.
So they have a conversation about how sometime in the last 3 months, because she's 2 months pregnant, in the last 3 months they had sex and we didn't see it. And then she's pregnant, and he just drops it on her like, hey, listen, I know you want to die with me. I understand that. I would also want to die with you, but you are carrying my child. It's the only thing. Oh, I'm getting a little dusty just talking about it.
It's the only thing you have for me. So
It's the only thing that will live past me. So it is your responsibility to make sure that this child lives. Which,
And you made a promise
comes up
to
again
me.
in the next episode.
And you
Not
made
episode.
You made a
Our
promise to
episode.
me that when the time came, you
would
would
go
go,
back.
through the rocks, and this is the fucking time. And that's when we start hearing fucking cannon blasts on the moor.
So
Boosh.
then they get on the horse
Boosh.
and they ride the horse.
Boosh.
Let's assume it's Donis, even though it wasn't all black and incredibly mighty. That's a little cheers to y'all who read the books. So they ride a horse to Craig and Dune. They don't go in the cabin where they have all kinds of sex and the English soldiers find them and Claire has to run up the hill to Craig to Dune.
Oh,
that
that's
doesn't
in the
happen.
books. No, this is way more
This is
effective.
better. I agree. So they go to Craig Nadoon, and they're talking about how much they love each other, and then Jamie delivers maybe the most iconic line in the history of the book.
And also the thing that every straight cisgendered woman has ever wanted a man to say to her in all time.
I'm paraphrasing, and I'm just going to say that so that it's not that I'm quoting it because it's from memory, but I'm pretty sure it's accurate, which is that if he has to endure 200 years of purgatory, he will do it. Because when he stands up before his creator, he will say, Lord, you gave me a rare woman, and I loved her well.
The hair on the back of my head and neck and every other part of me stood up.
Yep. That's what I'm saying.
And then, what do they do, Julie?
They do it.
An appropriate description.
And how do you feel about that?
Well, ultimately, I feel good that they did it.
I feel like I need to let you know that right now I'm looking across this table at Julie, who is a person that I love, who I watched this episode with yesterday. We had all kinds of feelings about it. And right now I'm looking at Julie, and behind her incredibly stylish eyeglasses, she is fucking tearing up right now in this moment.
It's true. Listen, if you have ever... I can't.
Oh my god! Should we take a moment? Should we have some guacamole?
We took a moment. Mm-hmm. We had some guacamole.
It's delicious.
Too much cumin, though.
It is a little cumin heavy. But that hummus was good.
It was good hummus. So, they're on Craignadoon.
And he is trying to convince her to touch the rock and go into the future. And she's really mad about it because obviously they're MTV.
But she knows that she has to because she's carrying his baby.
Right. Fine. So the whole thing that started our guacamole break was that they do actually do it.
So here's the thing we couldn't talk about when Beth was still here. Hey, Beth, I know you're listening. Cheers. They do it this episode, finally. And I'm not going to say it's not hot, because it's hot.
It's not hot.
No, it is, but in a different way.
It's real. It's like...
She's tearing up again.
If I knew it was the last time I was going to have sex with my husband...
I can't even make a joke about that. That was real. Oh, shit.
That's real.
Do we need more guacamole?
Nah, man. Seriously, though, I can soldier through. Claire did.
For 20 years.
So it's like the great love of your life. This could be the last time you ever see him. And then it's this sad, desperate doing it. Because that's all it can be. It's like the knife fight scene. It's exactly like the fight scene that was earlier.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's exactly like it because it's so real. If it was the last time you were going to have sex with the person that you love the most and you were never going to see them again, it would be desperate and it would be short and it would be over.
I'm really sorry. I know that no one listens to this podcast expecting it to be real, but Julie just fucking wrecked my whole life.
No, seriously. Like,
no, I believe you. Oh, honey, I believe you. I got a dude that I love, and there's no way possible for me to love him as much as you love Neil because we've not known each other as long, so it's not possible. But like,
well, I mean... Here's the thing is that if you're watching this episode, you get to see all the stuff in the future interspersed with this. So you understand, and I'm not going to give too much away, but you understand that Claire has tried to move on.
They've all seen it. You say what you want.
Right. She's tried to move on and she said goodbye and all these things that have happened. But in the moment when it happened to her, when she was actually there, She had no idea what was going to happen to her. She had no idea what would happen to this man. And it is the most raw and terrifying thing.
Let me make one addendum to what you're saying. I think that she knew exactly what would happen to this man, which
Well,
is that I think she knew he would die.
She thought he would die. So it would be the last time you would ever see this person again.
And not just because she was going through the stones, but because he was leaving her to die.
Right. So that's where her headspace is. So obviously,
and I'll say this, Julie sent this to me. There's a great article up on The Ringer, which is the new Bill Simmons website about Outlanders or romance. That's just really excellent.
it's a horrible title, but it's a great article.
Just ignore the title and then read it.
Anyway, it's as a woman who doesn't necessarily like do a lot of feminine performance things, like I don't do that.
She does love perfume, though.
I do love perfume, but that's for a different podcast. I love my husband a lot. And so when I think about these things, obviously I'm thinking about my husband, and it was rough.
And then in the background, we hear the cannons.
Oh, yeah. And that's the other
cannons
thing.
and the buzzing of Craig Nadeau.
There's no stopping it. Like, she's up there, he's up there. You hear the cannons. She can hear the buzzing. Obviously, he can't because he's a dummy. And then he forces her, like not forcing, but
it's like they're dancing.
they have their sad, beautiful doing it. And then he stands up and like takes her hand and makes her touch the stone. So she goes.
They like
back to
dance
the future.
backwards, and it's while they're hearing cannon blasts, and she keeps saying, "Can't you hear the buzzing? Come with me. Can't you hear the buzzing?" And he can't hear the buzzing, which matters more for what we'll talk about in the next episode. But then he just makes her touch the stone, and then she goes back, and I'm just not even gonna fucking call it a dick rock right now.
No.
It's too much. Mm-hmm. It's too much.
All right. So that's the past. So that's the end of that episode.
The sound we just heard was the sound of Julie's nose.
All right. So what's the scale on?
Should we save the scale for later? I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe we should just do it now.
No, you know what? That's true, because we shouldn't do costumes separately, because the 60s costumes are off the fucking charts.
They're too good.
All right, so, all right, real short and sweet. Where would you put this, the past half, on the doing it scale?
History of Violence.
Oh, I love that movie.
Because
and by that I mean I hate that movie.
But the depiction of actual married people doing it is important.
It's great. It's great because like people have been saying, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it the whole season. Because there wasn't enough I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I wish there was more doing it.
I wish there was more doing it in Paris, but I understand why there wasn't.
And this was exactly what it needed to be, but it doesn't do the things that doing it on Outlander usually does.
Right.
And that's fine, because that's what it should have been. I mean, it was very moving. I thought it was very moving.
It was very moving, but it was not.
Janine?
It was moving.
Yeah.
I don't have context, but it was a very moving moment.
It wasn't. It wasn't trying to excite you. It was just trying to tell the story.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
All right, so the next one will be costumes. So on the costume scale from, let's say...
And this is just the past, right?
Just the past.
Just Culloden.
We'll say train spot... I'm trying to think of just Scottish things. Train spotting to... 4 weddings and a funeral. I know you hate Andy McDowell, which makes this an unfair question.
She's the worst. Except in Magic Mike and Groundhog Day.
Well, then you have to accept both those as well. So, I guess 4 weddings and a funeral is not great costuming. You know what? Magic Mike is great costuming.
Okay.
So this is on a scale from Train Spotting to Magic Mike XXL, which was one of my favorite movies of 2015.
I can't even go that far. Once again, if we're just taking the Culloden times.
Just Scotland. Past Scotland.
It's all deprivation costumes except for BPD, and he's only there for 1 minute. Like everybody is wet and
So
starving
does that mean
and
it's
horrible.
like, brother, can you spare a dime?
I think maybe it's a little bit more like
Julie, I can hear you
Grapes
hitting
of
your
Wrath.
chair with your hand.
Grapes of Wrath. I'm going Grapes of Wrath. I'm going straight Peter Fonda.
That's good. All right. All right, last one. So on a scale of how, oh God. And here's where I say cheers to all the people who told me there wasn't enough alcohol in the world to watch this finale. On Twitter and on Facebook and all the other places.
Interesting though, because we're splitting it in half, right?
I know, but it's true for both. But especially for this.
I would never leave the couch.
So you would need to have all the alcohol with you.
Yeah.
And you want to have a lot of alcohol with you, right?
Everybody, may I recommend to you the Magnum of Robert Woodbridge Cabernet Sauvignon. That's basically 2 bottles of red wine, and then you have it in 1 bottle. Just saying.
Although I should say that what we drank was a growler of Smiley Brothers Purple Line Hefeweizen.
Which was very good.
And a Howler, which is a half growler and not an owl letter that you send to someone you want to punish. It's a half growler of the Smiley Brothers IPA.
Plus to start us off with Tall Boys of.
Oh yeah.
We did
a
have
fine Pilsner
We
beer.
did have a fine Pilsner.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tradition by
yeah.
now. We can't stop that.
So the thing is, you don't ever leave it all.
You will not.
I'm not sure I would have been capable of standing. I'm not sure I would have been I will say this. I told Julie to pause it on at least 2 occasions. But on neither of those occasions did
we go to the
couch.
bathroom? No, we didn't even leave the room.
No, it was just that we needed to catch our breath.
That's true.
And we'll be saying that again in the next episode. So, we're going to release these a day apart. So the next episode will be available tomorrow if you're listening on the day it was released. And if you were listening after, then wait, that's amazing. The next one's ready for you right now. But
Time travel. Touch a dick rock.
The next episode is just all going to be about 1968, and I'm going to guess that just like an inappropriate amount is going to be spent on Brianna's velvet pants.
They were really good.
So we'll be back for us in like 3 minutes. For you, whenever you download the next episode, I'm Allison.
I'm Julie.
And that's Janine.
Hey.
And this is Podlander Drunkcast. Thank you for listening. I hope you had as many feelings as we did. Gotta catch 'em all.